And here we go. So the Torah reading is Ki Tisa, and it begins in the Eitz Chaim Chumash on 523, and it's Exodus chapter 30, beginning with verse 11. There's a second reading this Shabbat. This is a special Shabbat, one of the Shabbatot getting ready for Pesach. So it's also the reading, it's Shabbat Para, Shabbos Para. Yeah, don't have a cow. So, but it's that reading is about getting people who have become ritually impure, who want to be able to come to the temple and during the pilgrimage festival. So to, remind them, you got, only a few more weeks left. Literally, we've got 3 weeks till Pesach. So this was the idea that you're gonna, people need to deal with their preparations to be able to come to the sanctuary in purity. So that's the second, small reading. Although it's actually longer than most small readings, but it's the auxiliary reading. The weekly Torah reading is Ki Tisa, and it continues in the beginning with talking about tabernacle related issues. So the idea of the annual tax that's used for the upkeep of the temple is there. And then we get extra little elements. We have the special basin, the sink that was made so that the priests would ritually wash their hands and feet before they went into the temple to do the service. And then we have the making of the anointing oil and also the incense itself and the appointing, this is already chapter 31, of Bezalel, and Oholiav is his assistant, and they are the two master artisans that are supervising all of the work that's going to take place. And then we're all ready to actually get going to finally do this thing with a final warning right before they're about to begin, that remember, Shabbat is primary. All of this sacred work that you need to do is all very good. Do it 6 days a week, but Shabbat is Shabbat. So even though this is a very, very special and holy task to build God's house or a meeting house between God and Israel, it doesn't overtake the sanctity of Shabbat itself. So that's the text that we have through almost till chapter 32. And at that point, we have the narrator say, and by the way, now that God has finished speaking on Mount Sinai, Moses is ready to take the 2 tablets and bring them down from Mount Sinai and give them to the Jewish people. So that's the setup. So we've been talking to tabernacle for a parsha, for 2 parshiot, and then this chunk here of Ki Tisa, and we find out that this is all God talking on Mount Sinai. And now we've got the interruption of talking about the tabernacle by talking about an event of bringing the 2 tablets with the 10 commandments on them, bringing them down and delivering them to the Jewish people who are all waiting for Moses to show up below at the foot of the mountain. And then chapter 32 brings us into the devastating story of what was happening down there, and the story of the golden calf. So that's happening below. There's a dramatic encounter back and forth between God and Moses, where God says, "I've had it," and Moses intercedes and prays to God to forgive the Jewish people. And this Torah reading section is the standard Torah reading section traditionally read and on the fast days, except for Yom Kippur, on Tisha B'Av and on Shavasar B'Tammuz and Asar B'Teves and Tainis and Tzom Gedalia, all the fast days, and Tainis Esther, the fast days, but mostly the fast days that we have of mourning for the temple. This Torah reading of Moses asking God's forgiveness and succeeding in getting God to renege from God's plan to, first of all, destroy the Jewish people, and then second of all, after he says, okay, I won't destroy them, but I'm going to abandon them. It's enough already. And Moses gets everybody back together again. So that's a whole gut-wrenching story. And there's, of course, the confrontation. The tablets themselves are smashed. There's a civil war that happens. 3,000 people die. And then there's a plague. And then after that, we have the storm passes. And then the question is, now what? So we have, we're already at chapter 33. In the middle of that chapter, we have the idea that Moses himself takes himself out of the camp, and anybody that wants to seek out God has to come to Moses. Moses is not going to them. So he's acting out in a concrete way this sense of estrangement, alienation that has developed between God and the Jewish people and Moses and the Jewish people. Moses continues to be in direct communion with God. And then we have the amazing story about God, show me your glory, nobody can see my face and live, etc. And the continuation of the process of reconciliation, the 13 attributes of mercy that are revealed to Moses, and the second set of tablets. So, and I ain't done yet. This is and then there's more, right? And then there's a whole little section about, okay, so then let me tell you, okay, if we are going to see each other, then let's set this up as a system. And we have toward the end of the Torah portion, the discussion of the 3 pilgrimage festivals. There's 3 times a year where we will see each other, God says. Okay, let's try it again. And that's in chapter 34. And the very end of the Torah reading is also quite extraordinary, where Moses comes down with the second tablets, and we have the image that became iconic, that Moses' face is shining. And that's the famous Michelangelo sculpture that follows a whole tradition that the rays of light are like horns, the same word in Hebrew, keren. And so that, the horned Moses, and whether, Jews have horns and so on. But anyway, everybody's afraid of Moses because he looks so awesome. And he has to put on a mask, right? And that's the end of the Torah reading. So there's an unbelievable amount of stuff in this Torah reading. And finding, one place to land is not so easy, because there's so much here that is profoundly engaging and troubling and challenging and inspiring. So what are we going to do? What do people want? All right,
I have a question, if I may. I don't know if this is what people want.
All right, the rest of the people can meditate, and Marty will ask his question. Go ahead.
It says, thou canst not see my face, for man shall not see me. this suggests that Hashem has some corporal being, which seems totally antithetical to everything I had believed in.
Okay, so
Meaning
that's-
that why
that's a-
would there be a face?
right. Why didn't you ask this question when the Torah talked about God's hand?
Why not? Ask it now.
Well, I'm just saying you had an opportunity to ask it already, for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, pretty much starting from the beginning of the Torah. So
Actually, I wasn't there for that session.
No, this is a notorious chronic problem that everybody that reads this portion and everybody reads that section of the portion has to come to grips with. What does that mean? We have a very famous, beloved part of the Torah that we haven't read yet in this year's annual cycle of reading, but it's something that's part of our heritage, part of our spiritual DNA, the threefold priestly blessing. Right? So that's something that people have recited, they've heard it recited, they've heard people say it in all kinds of places of blessing children and blessing a wedding couple, or all kinds of beautiful places, because it's such a beautiful set of blessings. What does that set of blessings say? So the first one says, Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. May the Eternal bless you and take care of you, right? Guard you. All right, that's the first one. What's the second one? Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka. V'chuneka, with a k at the end, right? With a dot in the end, the last thing. So what should God do? God should shine God's face upon you and be gracious to you. Okay, so there's God's face right there. And then the third one is Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, right? May God lift up God's face toward you and place peace before you. So God's face is all over the place. And in this Torah reading, actually, God's face is all over the place. So I'm going to use your question as our entry point to study today, okay? And we'll maybe we'll come to a little, better set of possible understandings after some study. So let's look at this section.
33:17.
What?
33:17.
So yes, but we're gonna start from 7. Okay, you found it already. So let's start at a little bit before that to get the context. Okay, so as I said, we've got this whole story. I mean, I told the whole story very, superficially. This is after the storm has subsided. In fact, let's start it from verse 6. So Susan, you have it. How about you do us the honors tonight?
This chapter 33?
Chapter 33, starting from verse 6. In the Eitz Chaim, it's 537, toward the bottom.
Thank you.
Okay, 6. So Israel remained stripped of their finery from Mount Horeb on.
Okay. So the translation is that the Israelites remained stripped of their finery from Mount Horeb, from Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, they're used interchangeably from that point on. So in other words, what a loss, right? There's and finery is a one possible translation. Do we have any notes here on the bottom?
Not in mine.
So some translate that it's not finery, but some translate it as their diadem, their crown.
My translation says ornaments.
Ornament. So there are in other words, the imagining of that they had in this moment of getting the Torah directly from God, standing at this amazing experience of revelation, they are endowed either with real or spiritual or symbolic decorations, ornaments, a coronation, and now they are stripped of them. Some people read it as active, that they stripped themselves of their crowns. So they took them over. We're not worthy anymore. We've so messed up that we no longer are worthy of wearing these marks of distinction and specialness. We were supposed to be a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, right? A kingdom of priests. No, we blew it. So that's the very, very down moment that we have here, a recognition, as it says in the notes, a sign of the people's remorse over their transgression. So it doesn't quite come out as much in the translation that we have here. If we say it's an active act, I think that's a little better translation and more to the point. So they see that they messed up. And now we come to verse 7. Go ahead.
Okay. Now Moses would take the tent and pitch it outside the camp at some distance from the camp. It was called the tent of meeting, and whoever sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting that was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, each at the entrance of his tent, and gaze after Moses until he had entered the tent. And when Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent while he spoke with Moses. When all the people saw the pillar of cloud poised at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise and bow low, each at the entrance of the tent. And the Lord would speak to Moses
Each at the entrance of his tent.
His tent, right? And the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one man speaks to another. And he would then return to the camp. But his attendant, Joshua, son of Nun, a youth, would not stir out of the tent.
Okay, thank you. So Marty, got any problems with this text?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Is that the answer coming through? Somebody's calling you with the answer?
Someone's calling me with the cliff notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says that the Lord spoke unto Moses face to face, ponim el ponim.
Yeah. So and then of course we also get the idea later that God says, you can't see my face and live. Nobody can see my face and live.
But you could see his back.
But you could see his back. So obviously we've got multiple difficulties, right? Your question was just in general, God is not physical form. God is
Correct,
not
correct.
the shape of a human being. So that's, so what's the Torah talking about here about face and back? It's ridiculous. But now we also have another contradiction, right? Another problem where God has said that you can't see my face and live. And here the description says, oh, by the way, you know what? When Moses and God were in the tent by themselves, they spoke face to face like you and me, right? Like two friends. So that seems to contradict, however we dispose of the idea that you can't see God's face, whatever that means, and you can't see God's back, whatever that means. If you can't, then how are they looking each other face to face, right? So we've got a whole layer cake of questions that we need to think about.
There's also an interesting hint at the relationship between them. The Ishel Re'ehu. It wasn't, I'm praying to my Lord, I'm, subservient or anything like that. It's, it's to my friend, it's to my equal, it's to, my. This is
to me, this is such an amazing text, this little section here, because it's so full of pathos. It's so full of just really, really thick emotional currents going on. You're right. I definitely, there's this sense of intimacy that's going on, but the sense of intimacy between Moses and God is within a very, very sad context, isn't it? It starts out, what does it start out? Moses would take the tent and pitch it outside the camp at some distance from the camp, right? He's saying, I'm out of here, right? He's saying, I cannot dwell within this encampment, right? I can't take it.
Maybe it's Sarat.
And,
We didn't get there.
What?
Maybe it's
Like-
Sarat. No, we
Like,
didn't
right?
get there.
It's like treating himself like a leper, right? He's exiling himself from the community. And this tent is then called the tent of meeting. Now, of course, the tent of meeting was exactly the tent that God was describing with so much excitement. Oh, the children of Israel are going to make this wonderful tent for me. It's going to be a tent of meeting. And it's going to have this in it and that in it. And then when they collect all the stuff and they make it, then v'shachanti b'tocham, I'll dwell in their midst. Right? So God wants to dwell in the campment. That's the way I would feel most comfortable reading that verse that we looked at before. And here we have a very sad reversal where they have turned their back on God. They've totally betrayed God. God is fuming. And the only reason that God hasn't wiped them out is because Moses has interceded and stopped God in God's tracks, literally. So, get back to that anthropomorphism business. Are you happy if God doesn't have a face and a back, but are you upset if God has a face and a back, but you're happy if God gets angry or doesn't? These are all human attributes that we're giving to God in order to be able to describe what's going on. Here we have Moses saying, that's it. I can't stand the idea of being within the encampment. I'm going to go out there. And then what does it say right after? It says, and anyone who would seek God, right? Kol mevakesh Hashem yetzei el ohel moed, asher michutz lamachaneh. The exact opposite of what the plan was. Instead of it being within the midst of the encampment, it's up to you now. Anybody that has some kind of sense that they want to be close to God, you're going to have to come after God. You're going to have to go out of the camp, out of this community as it's set up right now, with all of its baggage, and you're going to have to go and seek out Moses' tent. And it's ambiguous. Is this Moses' personal tent that has now become the quote unquote tent of meeting? As I say, it's the same term that was applied to the tabernacle, but we don't have the story of them making the tabernacle yet. There is no tabernacle established. So one very powerful way of reading it, this is Moses' own personal tent, and it's the tent of meeting between Moses and God. And then anybody else who wants to be part of this, okay, knock on the door. And we'll let you in, if there's room, but really it's basically just me and God, because the rest of you are not interested, to put it mildly. Yes, Rita.
So I was going to comment on this thing that anybody who sought the Lord could go, so that the invitation was there, and perhaps another sad thing is that no one's taking advantage of it. But I'm also confused about where Joshua is, because then it says that Joshua would not stir out of the tent. So was he in the tent with Moses?
That's the implication.
Yeah.
That's the implication. Joshua is, as it says there, Misharto. He's his valet. He's his aide de camp, right? He takes care of all the things that Moses has to do. He files his papers. He, answers his emails. He makes him, a cup of tea in the afternoon when he needs it, right? He's his apprentice.
But he would stay in the tent after Moshe left. So does Joshua develop a relationship with God then?
Doesn't say at all.
Doesn't, yeah.
right? It doesn't say at all. He's in the tent, and I would push it further, what you're pointing out. There are two people in this tent. One of them is in absolutely intimate, direct connection with God, and the other one is taking care of that person, but is not being given any kind of communication from God or have a relationship specifically with God. He's taking, there's that famous joke, right? Where the child asks their parent, it's the old joke. So, Daddy, why do you go to shul? You don't believe in God. So he says, well, Mr. Schwartz goes to shul to talk to God, and I go to shul to talk to Mr. Schwartz. Right? So that's what's happening here. Moses goes, is in the tent to talk to God, and Yehoshua is in the tent to take care of Moses. That's his role, to be that kind of servant. Moses, of course, doesn't stay there all the time. Joshua does, right? Joshua's got his hands full taking care of everything. He never leaves the tent. Moses goes back and forth, right? And when he, let's look at verse 18 again, 8, I mean, when this idea, it's out of the camp. Moses is constantly walking back and forth between his tent and the camp, right? He has business to do in the camp. He has to take care of things. He's the leader after all, even though he has demonstratively shown how displeased and how estranged he is from the people. He's still the boss, and he still has responsibilities. So he's going back and forth between the camp and his private tent of meeting with God. So verse 8, let's hear verse 8 one more time. Susan, please.
Okay. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, each at the entrance of his tent, and gaze after Moses until he had entered the tent.
Okay, so let's pause now for a second and take this in.
Right back. I'm on a class.
This is a very cinematic kind of scene that's being described, right? Moses is busy. He's adjudicating between two people who are having a fight, or he's taking care of whatever else has to be taken care of with all of the community. And then he's finished for the day, or he's taking a break, whatever it is. He leaves the camp and he starts walking to his tent, and everybody knows that that's where he's going. And what do we, let's imagine, let's conjure up the scene. What is being described here? So again, if we think about it cinematically, I can imagine crunch, 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 crunch. We have a little close up of Moses' feet, walking along on the pebbles and in the wilderness, and he's walking along, and then we pan up, and what do we see all around him?
Well, everyone has heard, I guess, has heard, and they come sort of rushing out to their doorway,
Right.
and watch him, and they watch him go.
Right. So whether it's rushing or whoever is standing out there, people know exactly what he's doing, and you get this crunching is the only sound that's there. Nobody's saying a word, and Moses is finished in more ways than one with whatever he's done in the community, and they watch, and they pay attention. They're watching this man in his sadness walk away from them and walk toward his private tent. And they wait. That's the part also, right? And they wait in their watching. They stop everything until he disappears into the tent. What's going on? What kind of feelings are going on here, are swirling around? Or what kind of feelings do we have reading that kind of description?
It doesn't really say how they feel. I mean,
I know, I'm not, there's no right or wrong answer. That's
I'm
why
saying,
I'm putting it out to us.
are they looking
Let's try to fill
longingly?
in imaginatively.
Right, are they looking longingly and wishing that he didn't have, that he wasn't going, that he away, that it was in their midst? Or are they relieved? Like, oh, thank God that it's out there. This is like too frightening for us. I'm so glad that it's a little far away. I mean, you don't really, yeah,
Right.
it could be either one of those things.
Or more. Come
Yeah,
on, and that's the invitation. I'm inviting us all to play on this, with this, and imagine different kinds of reactions.
There's a trepidation. There's a trepidation, there's a fear. There's certainly not an excitement, right? Because they were excited that it would have approached him. But there's more
So
of a
important point.
concern.
Nobody's reaching out.
yeah,
Nobody's saying a word. When we think about, for instance, at a burial, people come to the burial, and then the immediate family waits, and we make two rows, and those 2 rows are for the family to walk between, and we watch them walk, with their sense of loss or pain or emotional burdens of whatever it is. And the whole point of us watching them is to reach out to them, to say, Hamakom Yenachem Etchem, may God comfort you, or, we love you, or the person who passed away was so, you say some words of comfort, you say some words of reaching out, you do something. Nobody's approaching Moses. Nobody's saying a word. Nobody is gesturing in any way. They're just waiting for him to disappear.
Well,
they're not hiding in their
to get
tent.
back to, I'm sorry, to get back to something Alan was just saying, could it be because of, he used the word trepidation, I believe, that the divine presence accompanies Moses when he goes into the tent?
Well, it seems that's when the divine presence is. So right now there is no divine presence. When he's out there, on Fifth Avenue and the corner of 66th Street, and he has to walk out and go, out of the camp. They're all just watching him move, and there is no divine presence that's palpable, that's visible. Back to your question, can you see God? Can you feel God? Does he have an aura around him? That's not going to come until later. At this point, it's just really just a man walking in the desert among all of these other people that are there, but are not there in a certain sense. So is it trepidation? Is it guilt? The Midrash has, unfortunately, but courageously, it also imagines some people resenting him. And they're watching him go, and they go, who does he think he is? Oh, he's too good for us. He's probably taking advantage of us right now. Look at how well fed he is the way the Midrash goes. So and they're watching his back as he walks away. Right?
But Rabbi, they all had to feel that they were in the presence of something very significant if they all stood up.
So,
that was certainly a sign of major respect. No one stands up when I walk into a room.
Out of respect. They know that if they would stand up, you would really get upset about it, and they don't want to.
Precisely.
They don't want to push your buttons. So maybe I'm cautious about when people say everybody must have felt so and so, or somebody sometimes says to me, Rabbi, you must feel so and so. I don't have to must feel anything. Who knows what I feel? Don't tell me what I must feel. So I think that for this exercise that I'm trying to have us engage in is there is no must. I think that some people are, look, he's the guy, and he's got God on his side. So don't mess with Moses. But that doesn't mean that you respect him. That doesn't mean that you love him. That doesn't mean that you like him. It just means watch out. So, of course you could love him, and you could feel that kind of respect that you're talking about. Though I'm just saying there's no must. There's no must because the must closes off all the other possibilities. Michael, you have to unmute. You must unmute.
How's that? It's also what they were just instructed to do a little bit before. Moses ascended to Sinai. They were all told, stand back. You don't. You stand here and you watch him from afar.
Right. So that's a very
That's
similar.
what they wanted. That's what they asked for, right? They were frightened and they said, please, you go and you be the one who talks to God, you be the intermediary. Yeah.
So, but here there's something very, very painfully different, right? This is not, even though it's seen in many ways, it's the same idea. It's the same actions, the same setup, except that like you said, that was out of wanting it, that it was out of, saying, okay, you're going to be our man and you're going to, take care of this. And, isn't there hate? Good. Here, the estrangement part, the alienation part is very heavy. So the same moment of promise that existed before when Moses first goes up to the mountain is in a certain sense repeated, except the meaning has been polluted, right? The meaning is really changed. Or is it? Maybe another possibility is somebody saying, maybe he'll go into that tent and maybe he'll be able to talk to God and maybe he'll be able to make this better. Maybe our nightmare will be able to end. Are they hoping? The trepidation can be a trepidation of, something terrible is going to happen. Or are they hoping for something? They're afraid, but maybe it'll be okay. Maybe he can pull this off. Maybe he himself will soften a little bit. So like I say, I don't have a firm conviction that there's only one good answer here. What I think is what's really meaningful is the mix of contradictory and very painful. The contradictions here are painful. This is not just Disney. This is not a happy situation. And we haven't even thought about what's going on in Moses' heart. With that crunch, crunch, crunch. As he's walking back to the tent after the hour or the 12 hours, or however long he's been dealing with stuff in the community, he's walking back. What does he think? What does he feel? Yeah, Alan.
It's funny, I was thinking when we were getting ready to start the conversation this evening, and Marty was talking about how often, the panim, I was going through and how many times it said in this parsha, the stiff-necked people. And he's walking there amongst these people that are looking at him, and he's saying, these stiff-necked people are looking at me now. That's what stuck to me when you asked that.
All right, so you're channeling that kind of sense of real resentment and disappointment and anger.
Or how do I get through to these stiff-necked people? Not so much as a resentment, but like a teacher with a difficult student, perhaps, if I could use that analogy. How do I get through to these people to understand, and how do I keep my composure? And because as in terms of understanding the relationship that they could possibly have,
right?
Because he's really showing afterwards in the next verses the relationship that he has. We talked about the word Re'ehu. We talked about God comes down to visit him, not the other way around. There's a relationship here that he's modeling.
So whether that's actually visible to everybody is a good question. But what is visible to everybody is that he's walking away from them. He's leaving, right? He's not doing the sleepover. He's out. So now
Rabbi,
again,
this Moshe Rab, this is not, forgive me.
Already,
metaphorically speaking, we were all present at Sinai. But if I were present at that point physically, at that time that we're discussing right now, we're talking about not some chaveros or chaverim, we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. It's a
Yeah.
whole different mindset. This is a man who was our teacher above all teachers, with all respect to all the teachers we've known over the years.
Yeah. So what are you trying to say?
That he had this unique position that people were in awe of him. They were in trepidation, of him, but there was this positive and this negative side. He's the one who taught them, who took them out of the land.
Right.
you
He's
know.
also
He may have been lost on the way, by the way.
right. He's
like
also
this
the
one.
one who just recently smashed God's tablets
Yes.
and directed his followers to kill 3,000 people in the community. He's a complicated guy, and their relationship with Moses is very complicated. More than one time, Moses complains to God, "Get me out of here. They're about to kill me." So yes, everything you're saying was, I'm sure, true for some people, but not always, and not for all people. So and again, when you feel tremendous shame, that's not always conducive to feeling good feelings toward other people. If you feel tremendous guilt, which is not the same thing, right? The people here now have come through this terrible failure, and I think that was that business, taking off their finery, their adornments, their crowns, and so on. They feel very diminished. Feeling diminished sometimes makes people feel more, connected to their good side, but sometimes it makes them feel more resentful and go off and to do other feel and think and do even worse things. This country is suffering from millions of people feeling shame and resentment to the point where they're doing real damage to society. So that's what I'm saying. There's a range of things going on here. Let's go again now. He enters the tent. Verse 9.
And when Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent while he spoke with Moses.
So now we get finally this tangible sign that something awesome is present, but it's not until Moses is in the tent. Joshua's in the tent all the time, no pillar. Moses is two inches away from the tent, no pillar. When he gets to the tent, when Moses is in there, then the pillar appears. And of course, we've had, because we know we've had the pillar of God's presence at the beginning. It takes us out of Egypt. It leads us through the wilderness. And later on, we'll have that pillar as the symbol of God's presence within the tabernacle itself, right? But here, this is a uniquely directed presence of God, not for anybody else. And then they see this, right? Verse 10.
When all the people saw the pillar of cloud poised at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise and bow low, each at the entrance of his tent.
Right. So again, everybody's at the entrance of their tent. That's that phrase that we've had from before. And now they see that God is there, and they all bow down to the pillar. Right? They haven't bowed down to Moses, but they bow down to this pillar. They see that this is what's happening. And then the next verse goes, go ahead.
The Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one man speaks to another.
Keep going.
And he would then return to the camp, but his attendant Joshua, son of Nun, a youth, would not stir out of the tent.
Right. So God speaks to Moses. Now, how do we understand face to face? Of course, the last couple of minutes, right? Back to Marty's topic here.
It
So-
sounds like they're equals.
So that's been pointed out, yes. We have this kind of very intimate and equal, mutual kind of relationship, like one friend to another. How beautiful that is. Does that mean that we're talking about, thunder and lightning? God's voice is shattering the cedars of Lebanon or something like that? No, it becomes a very, very private kind of, it's a conversation. There's a conversation going on between God and Moses. And this is where we get in the text, Moses walking through the camp, walking through the people, silence, separation. He gets into the tent. God's presence arrives. In other words, God's waiting for Moses. Whenever you can make it, then I'll be there, right? God arrives. The public outside sees this, and they see it from afar because they're in the camp and God and Moses are out of the camp. So they see it over there. And then as far as the rest of the people are concerned, this verse is unknown to them. In other words, certainly content-wise, but they're also not hearing it. They're not seeing it. This is a kind of holy of holies situation. And the face-to-face is, in this context, not so much that God has a face, but that there's some kind of secret, unknowable connection between Moses and God that is nobody else's business, and that nobody else has any contact with. The face-to-face is that kind of intimacy. So in the 2 minutes that we have left, and then of course Moses, guess what? Moses then leaves. He doesn't stay there forever, right? He has to go back up. I got another Zoom meeting in another 15 minutes. I got to go back, and get set up for the next board meeting or whatever. So it's very temporary. It's very, very private, and it's very, very close and mutual between Moses and God at that moment. When Moses says to God later, "Show me your glory." Now let's just take a quick look at it, and that's on page 540, and no, 539. So let's start from we're only going to be doing a little tiny bit. Verse 20, chapter 33.
Got it. But he said, "You cannot see my face, for man may not see me and live."
Keep going.
And the Lord said, "See, there is a place near
Near me.
Mount Stanton."
No, near me.
Oh,
There's a
near
place near
me.
me.
Oh, near me. Station yourself on the rock. And as my presence passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock and shield you with my hand until I have passed by. And then I will take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen.
Okay. So in the 14 seconds that we have left, there's a tremendous intimacy here also. And you're asking about a face and about not seeing God's face. What about God's hand right here? Right? God says, you're not going to be able to see my face. You'll see my back. But meanwhile, go over to this location, and I'm going to take my hand and put it right on you so that you don't get in trouble by looking at what you can't look at. And I just want to translate 21. And the Eternal said, we have here, see, there's a place near me. I think a better translation is, there's a place with me. E-T means with me. Hine, makom iti. Look, he says, and the word hine we've talked about many times. Look, look, look. There is a place with me, but it's not all that you might yearn for. That's what the face part is. If you're talking about having this equality all the time, it's impossible. But there are going to be moments, and there are going to be ways that we can reach out to each other, that I can touch you, and that you can hold on to me. But it's not going to be, I just want to see your face all the time. You can't do that. That's not the way we're going to be able to live.
There's
So-
such a lovely symmetry between the two stories, between the two sections. First with the Israelites wanting to see Moses, but Moses being hidden and concealed and disappearing into the cloud. And similarly with Moses wanting to see God, but God concealing himself.
Yeah, great, good. All right,
Whatever
well,
happened to ineffable?
I can't say anything about that. Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Night.
Shabbat shalom.
Good night.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Good week.